Cutting machine has changed, nice and refreshing. It kind of cut a little weird. My mat was warped and it kept cutting weird. Second tip is that you want to make sure you are cleaning your rollers regularly. Hey everyone, so it's officially been a little over a year since I have owned and operated my Siser Juliet cutting machine. So I wanted to make a video this week talking about 1 year check-in to see if my overall views of the Siser Juliet cutting machine has changed, what issues I encountered during the past year, and what I did to resolve it. Also share some general tips for using the Siser to make sure that your cuts are accurate every time. So this is just a quick disclaimer. I just wanted to let you guys know that I am a sticker and stationery small business, so my primary use for this cutting machine are sticker paper, but I have used it for magnetic sheets. Like last week, for example, if you've watched my small business vlog, I used it for magnetic sheets, but those aren't really thick. I've used it for cutting shrink plastic as well. So that's probably the thickest and hardest material that I've ever used to cut with my Siser Juliet. But yeah, the primary, I would say 98% of the materials that I cut are sticker paper only, and therefore I have no experience with things like faux leather and like heavy duty cardstock and stuff like that. So how's it been after a year? I would say it has been a really nice and refreshing experience compared to using a Cricut machine. If you are a Cricut user, I want to say this will be so much better. That's what I personally felt when I moved from my Cricut Explore Air. I think it was either 1 or 2, and I moved to using the Siser Juliet. Like I said before, it was gifted to me by my boyfriend. I made a video about it, doing an unboxing and a first impressions kind of video, so you can check that out if you want to see it. In my opinion, it is quieter than the Cricut. It cuts a lot more accurately. I remember when I used to use the Cricut, I had to space my stickers out far apart because I was afraid that it would do a miscut and cut into other things that I did not want it to cut, but I don't have that problem with the Siser Juliet at all. Like the Cricut machine, it uses the print and cut feature where it has like the 4 corner registration marks, but it does it so much more accurately than the Cricut, in my opinion. I can literally just let it cut and walk away and not worry that it's going to tear my paper apart and just do something funky like the Cricut did. So I'm extremely happy with the Siser Juliet, and I'm super glad that I got it. I totally recommend it if you're looking for a new machine and your current one is just driving you crazy. Did the Siser experience any hiccups? Initially, I thought they were hiccups from Siser Juliet, but I'm actually thinking now that it was user error, my error. There were times where once in a while it would kind of cut a little weird, like it would just cut across a sticker, either on my sticker sheet or the die cut stickers, which at first I couldn't really find an explanation as to why it would do that. I made sure that the print and cut files were correct and accurate, and there were no weird things like sticking out like a random white line that I left in my drawing file. As of late, like maybe in the past 1 or 2 months actually, I started seeing an increase in miscuts, specifically on my sticker sheets, and for some reason it was not doing that to all of my sticker sheets except the void cats and maybe my reading cat sticker sheet. So I don't know if you can see here, but the amount of sticker sheets that I have here is kind of a crazy amount, and obviously since these are his cut sticker sheets, I cannot sell them because it literally just cut like 2 or 3 elements here in half, and that's not something that I want to sell as even a seconds to my customers. That was kind of the problem that I had faced once in a while, but it was more prevalent these past few months, and I couldn't really figure out what was going on. I tried to redraw this entire sticker sheet, and I tried to create a new Leonardo Design Studio print and cut file for them, but it still kept doing the same things. And the interesting part was that the miscuts were all on the same stickers. It had a consistent miscut line of where it would drag it to, so I couldn't for the longest time figure out what the problem was. But actually the problem was not with the Siser Juliet cutting machine, it was actually a problem with my cutting mat. So again, I kind of went over this in last week's small business vlog, but if you haven't seen that, it turns out that the cutting mat that I was using cutting, which was one of my Cricut cutting mats, was warped. Whenever I would roll it into the Siser, the part of the cutting mat that is between two of the rollers would kind of arch up. So basically what was happening was, as the cutting machine was doing its thing, part of my sticker paper would kind of go up and inadvertently touch the blade, which was why I was seeing these consistent zigzags and miscuts for specific parts of the sticker sheet. I'm sad I only realized this recently, but I had to watch the machine work a couple of times for me to realize what the problem was. And after I switched from my Cricut cutting mat to the Siser cutting mat that it originally came with, everything worked out perfectly. I had no miscuts whatsoever. So I would say that was the biggest issue that I experienced with my Siser Juliet, and I thought it was the Siser Juliet just kind of going nuts. And it was just so bizarre because it only would happen once in a while before, but in the past 2 months it had been doing it so consistently, and I didn't know what the reason was for it. I'm just glad to know that it was because of the cutting mat and not an actual issue with the hardware or the software of the Siser Juliet, and all I needed to do was replace the cutting mat, and voila, everything was back to normal. So with that said, did the Siser experience any hiccups? I actually don't think so. I think it was operating perfectly normal, but either I accidentally turned down the force settings or my mat was warped and it kept cutting weird. So with that mystery solved and out of the way, I'm super happy to say that I have not actually experienced any real issues with the Siser Juliet. Besides that problem that I had that I thought came from the Siser Juliet, I have nothing but good things to say about the cutting machine. And honestly, I'm really glad that I have it, because the Cricut was just a big headache to try and troubleshoot all the time. Since using the Siser cutting machine, I haven't had to calibrate anything or change out the blade. I feel like the blade still cuts very well, just like it did when I first unboxed it and set it up. Again, maybe it's because I'm not cutting insanely hard and thick stuff. I'm mostly cutting sticker paper, and I think your mileage will honestly vary depending on what you're using the Siser cutting machine for. But the blade is still great, and as long as you're checking on the force and the speed of everything and making sure that it is on the right settings that you intended it to be, the Siser Juliet or Romeo is a really great and versatile cutting machine that is virtually headache-free. So some general tips for the Siser cutting machine, and this could apply for both the Juliet and the Romeo depending on which size you need. You want to make sure that the rollers are on that grippy gray part that is on the bottom, lying along the bottom of the Siser cutting machine, because the rollers need that grippy area to make sure that it grabs onto your material correctly. If it is on the white part and not on those grippy gray things, it can roll around and mess up your material, whatever you're cutting, and that is not a fun time. Second tip is that you want to make sure you are cleaning your rollers regularly. Those rollers absorb a little bit of ink every time they roll around, whether you're like cutting greeting cards or stickers like me, and they also get a lot of those sediments that come when the blade is making contact and cutting the material out. For me, I get a lot of that like fine powder from the sticker paper whenever it cuts stuff out, and it just gets a little nasty every time. So I try to make sure that I clean those rollers regularly. I don't do it every single time I do a print and cut job, because that's just a little crazy and I use that a lot. So I would say I clean mine maybe once a week. I think that is good enough for my needs. And again, make sure you double check your cut settings, whether it is in the regular cut mode or if it's in perf cut and you're doing like sticker sheets like I do. I also made a tutorial on how to make sticker sheets with the Siser Juliet if you're interested. But yeah, you want to make sure you double check your cut settings. I feel like that is an easy setting to overlook, and you only realize it until after the Siser Juliet or Romeo has cut out your whatever material you're doing and you realize it either cut too deep or not enough. So that's a super common mistake I feel like people make even with other cutters as well. So just double check your settings. And also, if you are experiencing the same problems that I did, where the blade was mysteriously cutting into things where it shouldn't have cut and making weird zigzags and just completely ruining your sticker sheets, you want to make sure that you also check your cutting mat. I didn't think of my cutting cutting mat at all when I was considering what was suspect for why my Siser Juliet was cutting the way it was. These cutting mats are susceptible to warping, and if they do, then they could accidentally make contact with the blade when they're not supposed to be. So just double check that your mats are okay and they're not warped and arching when they are going under the rollers. Make sure they are nice and flat so you don't experience the same problem that I have and you don't wind up with a bunch of seconds. I think those are all of the things that I wanted to share, as well as all of the tips that I have for you guys. Honestly, like I said, the Siser Juliet has been really great to me, and I have figured out the reason why it was cutting weird, and that was my fault or the cutting mat's fault and not Siser's fault. So hope you enjoyed this video, and for those of you who are on the fence of buying a Siser, I hope this video helped you out and give you a more informed decision from someone who has owned it for a whole year. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. As always, please leave a thumbs up if you found this video to be helpful, and I'll see you next week. Bye!